Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Fundraising Conversations. And today I have a great pleasure to welcome as my guest Charlotte Brandsma from Growfunding to discuss crowdfunding as a fundraising tool. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Paulina. Happy to be here today.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. And let's jump right in. And first of all, make sure that we are all on the same page. And so let's talk about what crowdfunding actually is.
Sure. So, crowdfunding, very basically, is a form of public financing whereby a big group of people, the public or the crowds, comes together to finance a project or an organization or a business of a third party. So, what basically happens is that you get a direct connection between the funder and the person who is funded. And usually this is facilitated by a crowdfunding platform. Now, of course, to make it a bit more complicated, crowdfunding is an umbrella term. There are many different types. And basically, those types of crowdfunding really depend on the type of relationship that you get between the public and the project.
So I think I participated in a Kickstarter crowdfunding when it was
Right.
about launching a project. Then, of course, nonprofit crowdfunding, and then also like investor crowdfunding, where one actually becomes sort of a equity holder in the company. So there's many different ways this tool can be used, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned Kickstarter, which is really sort of the godfather of crowdfunding. I think many people are familiar with Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is a really great example of a social platform. So, on the one hand, you have those platforms that establish a social relationship between the crowd and the project. And that happens basically when money only flows one way. So you said you participated in a Kickstarter campaign. You probably gave money to a project, and in return for that, you got something back.
A
Either with
product,
it.
yeah. A
Yeah,
discount, I think, and maybe a gift, yeah.
exactly. So that can happen. That is called reward-based crowdfunding, but it's also very common that it's just a gift. And in that case, we talk about crowd giving. So you give money, and you don't give really anything back in return, except of course good karma. So that's really the one part. And then you talked about equity crowdfunding, and that's a completely other beast that we call more financial crowdfunding, and that is when money goes both ways. So of course, with equity crowdfunding, the name already says it. You buy basically you get a little bit of the company. So you invest, you get in return equity as soon as the organization or the business in this case starts making profit. But I think what is more common, and maybe some of our participants here also know this concept, is crowd lending. And that is actually the biggest, sort of the biggest growing crowdfunding market at the moment, whereby a lot of different people provide a small loan to someone, and then in return, at some point in the future, get that money back, either with interest or not. That really depends on the
Okay.
project.
Yeah. And so when it comes to nonprofit projects, projects, that advance social or issues or work for against climate change or any kind of value-based initiative, which types of these crowdfunding are then typically used?
Typically, I would say in the case of nonprofits, it's more the social crowdfunding. So there, typically, money goes only one way. So from the crowd to the project. And either they get something back for that or not. That really depends on the case in hand.
Okay. So before I sort of start asking you about, ins and outs of organizing a crowdfunding campaign for nonprofit projects, I would like to know a little bit about the organization you work for, Growfunding. And basically, could you tell me what you guys do?
Yes, of course, absolutely. Very happy to talk about us. So Growfunding is a Belgian-based crowdfunding platform. We are a civic crowdfunding platform, and that basically means that we do not launch campaigns for profit. We don't really want to make a profit on the projects that we support, but we really focus on creating social impact. So that means that we only accept projects that want to have a positive impact on society. But it also means that crowdfunding for us is not really, funding is not really the end goal in itself. Of course, it's an important part of doing a crowdfunding campaign, but basically we have bigger objectives. So of course we want to create social impact, but we also very much focus on building networks around projects. So networks of partners, networks of people, to basically ensure that these projects are not just a one-off, but that they can exist sustainably also in the long term.
Can you tell me about some examples of what kind of initiatives you support?
Yeah, sure. I have lots of examples because it's really quite broad. Maybe just to give a bit of a context. So we, like Growfunding was born in 2012. And really we are social workers at heart because we started as a research project at the social work department of the Odyssey University in Brussels, it's now called. And that's really important to know because those social work principles really underpin everything that we do. So the types of projects that we support are quite varied, but also the types of people that we support are quite varied. So in our work, and maybe you can show a few examples on the slides, we really focus on different target groups. So for example, on the left-hand side, you see the project Click for Change. This is a project by an international NGO, Palestine Solidarity, who wants to develop an app so that people in their day-to-day shopping can identify products that come from occupied territories and then make a conscious choice whether they want to buy it or not. But then also, for example, we support court cases. So the trial of solidarity, which is basically by a group of local activists who needed money to launch a court case against the Belgian state to support migrants and refugees. Then we have our friend Tony, who is a lingerie designer, and he works really around inclusivity. So especially about, he designs really beautiful pieces for people who have a bigger size. But then also we work a lot around sustainability. And that's really the final example where you see that farmers wanted to raise money to basically raise awareness around the fact that our seeds these days come from big international organizations, and farmers really have lost touch with how to grow things themselves. So
that's like a public awareness campaign.
Yes, indeed. So what this really shows is that, of course, these are all very different projects, but what they have in common is that they don't, I mean, of course, they're very individual, quite local and small, but they all address a bigger cause. And you also, sorry, maybe one more thing that I wanted to say is that this also shows that some of these target groups are quite vulnerable. So newcomers, Tony, for example, he doesn't really have a strong formal network. So in that case, we also focus a lot on coaching and helping these people really make their projects to a success.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. And but then what I'm getting from these examples is that sometimes this can be really typical non-profit initiative, and others, if I understand, Tony, would actually eventually be a business that would have an impact, right? So you're open to both.
We're open to both. So we focus on activism, we focus on nonprofits, but we also focus on social profit. For us, it's more important that it has an impact in some way, that it tells a bigger story, that it wants to address a societal issue, that it typically falls into a category of either being nonprofits or not. So social profit is certainly welcome on our platform also.
Okay, great. And you are the managing director at Growfunding. And how
Yeah.
did it actually happen that you landed that position?
Very good question. That's what my family wonders still every day. So I started my career as a researcher at a think tank. So I studied international relations. So being now the managing director of a crowdfunding platform doesn't seem to be the most logical career choice, but in fact it actually is. So I've been very interested in gender equality for a long time. And while working at a think tank, I and other colleagues of mine, mostly women, really noticed that we weren't so visible in the public debate. By we, I mean women.
In
And that
Brussels.
in Brussels, yeah. So, and in Brussels, but very much in the EU bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't make a lot of sense to us because there are many women working in research and working in the public
Highly
debate.
educated and cultivated women, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So we're like, okay, is this just anecdotal or is there something a bit more behind that? So we started coming together and we actually thought, why don't we set up a LinkedIn, but for women policy experts, so that there can never be an all-male panel again, that there can never be a public debate again without women present, and basically for no one to have an excuse and not to invite a woman for a talk or an interview or for whatever. And that was all great. So we had the idea, we wrote the plan, we wrote the technical plan, etc. But of course we needed money to build this thing, and that wasn't easy. So we went around to our different think tanks. We said, okay, this is a great idea. Can you support us? Can you pour some money into it? We don't need much, only 7,500 euros. But we got always no. I mean, no, we love the idea, but there is no money. And to be honest, like for female founders, I'm sure like our viewers will recognize this. It's quite hard to access finance, and that we really found out for real. So then we thought, okay, we need to do something else, and we thought crowdfunding. Why not? So we started doing some research about platforms, and then we got to Growfunding back in 2017, and we launched a campaign there. So that's really how I got to know Growfunding, stayed in touch, and eventually applied and got a job there.
Okay.
So yeah.
And so Brussels Binder is an organization that was started through crowdfunding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the best choice we ever made. So here you see on the slides our campaign back in the days. Looks very vintage now. Now I look back on it. It's very funny to see that. But yeah, we started. So I said we started as a crowdfunding campaign basically because we didn't have any other way to access finance. So that really was the key motivation to begin with. But there were also some other reasons why crowdfunding was very good for us. First of all, I think
let's maybe just pause because I wonder whether everyone knows what Brussels Binder is. I myself also live in Brussels, so I'm aware of this fantastic initiative and also know some other persons who have been involved. But let's just clarify specifically what was the project that you launched through crowdfunding before we explain why that was a good idea.
Sure. Simply put, the Brussels Binder is an NGO that is dedicated to amplifying the voices of women in the public debates. And we do that in different ways, but very practically. So we offer tools to conference organizers, to think tanks, to media outlets to help them find women to put on air or to put at their panels or to put at their conferences. Our star product is a database. So we have over 2,000 women experts in a really wide range of policy fields that are open to be invited to speak as experts on whatever topic you can imagine. But then also we have some other tools. We have basically toolkits, like how can you be a male ally? Why is it important to have women on your panel? Guides for public speaking. We offer some trainings also around public speaking, around diversity. So yeah, basically the full package, but all really focused on like increasing the number of women in the public debates.
And so the original crowdfunding campaign crowdfunded for this start product, so the database. Is that correct? Okay.
That's right. So we really needed 7,500 euros to pay for a web developer to build a database for us. That was very basically the reason why we started this campaign and where we built this campaign around. But I mean, it was fundraising, but for us, it was also really about communication. So it was communication. It was also an awareness raising campaign about the problem of not having women in the public debate. Like, why is it important to have diversity, but also making people aware that there are no women, you know, that we are underrepresented, that there are only 1/3 of people in the debates. And I think that really struck a chord. We strategically launched actually at this time of the year, so around International Women's Day, which gave us a lot of attention, and which also helped us to already recruit experts for the database itself, because we didn't want to launch with 0 people on the website.
Right.
We wanted to launch with already hundreds of people. So we sort of strategically used the funding also to reach some other objectives. And in that sense, I already said crowdfunding was really good for us. Also because it really democratized the funding of this initiative, and it really helped us like build momentum, but also a network around it that really still supports the Brussels binder today. I mean, all these funders from the beginning, I can't remember how many there were, but all these people are still in touch with us today, and they still help us either through advice, through helping us access other funding. Some of those early partners became long-term partners. And I think that is why it's also good to think about crowdfunding as part of your fundraising strategies and not necessarily as a one-off. I mean, crowdfunding, of course, is a one-off thing, but it can be part of a wider fundraising plan. And you can, for example, do crowdfunding at the beginning of your fundraising journey, especially when you want to start up something. That, for example, in the case of the binder, we could finance the product, which we could then take to other funders to say, look, it's already there, like it's working. Do you want to invest? Or you can do it at the end where you already fundraise by other means, but use really that crowdfunding campaign to build your network and to build a communication around it. So to get the word about your campaign or your organization or your project out there. So see where crowdfunding fits into your fundraising strategy. I think that is a really important takeaway. I hope that people will remember of this talk.
So really not just a fundraising tool, but also a publicity tool and a very strong tool to build networks and connections.
Absolutely.
So that's really interesting. Okay, so we promised that we will talk about basically who and when should consider crowdfunding. So this is, as you said, either at the very start or later in the process. So here there is no fixed things. I always wonder when it comes to crowdfunding whether you need, well, let's just say I have actually checked out a couple of times different things, and what I have seen is that there's always like a really, really good video. And so probably one needs either, funding for that video in the first place, or a video maker who will want to do it pro bono because they support the project. So that was one of the observations that I wanted to hear your impression about. And then the second observation was basically that, when the campaign is ready, and we go presumably on social media, right, to tell people about it, then either there's a large group of people who is going to be posting on their personal profiles towards their friends and connections, or there is already the initiative has a page with quite a lot of following, an audience, because otherwise I can't really see how would how would people actually
Right.
find out about that crowdfunding campaign. So a little bit of a chicken and egg question.
Mm, yeah.
I wanted to hear what you think.
Well, I mean, we always say preparation is everything. When it comes to a crowdfunding campaign, it's really not a magical solution to just have money falling from the sky. It's a lot of work. But maybe just to start with the video. Yes, I mean, we always tell our projects you have. I mean, it's actually mandatory for us to have a video because there's been some research on this, which been done by friends of us in the Netherlands by another civic crowdfunding platform that basically shows that when you have a video, the chances that you succeed are 80% higher than when you do not have a video. I mean, it's quite striking, and of course that's because like we as humans we're very visually, you know, like
Sensitive,
we
yeah.
exactly sensitive. We want to see nice images. We want people to tell the story because you can have a video without people. That also doesn't work really well. So
Mhm,
you say, do you really have to have a videographer? For us, it really doesn't matter that much. It should be authentic. So if it's
mhm,
you with your smartphone explaining to the crowd why you are fundraising, what's needed, where you can maybe show your projects or explain what it's about, basically doing the pitch live for people, that can already be enough. It shouldn't be long, it shouldn't be super fancy, but it should show why you care and why others should care. So
mhm.
that's really the most important thing. Now, if you have costs of your video, like put them into the amounts that you want to raise. I mean, no one should lose on doing a crowdfunding campaign. I mean, put the amount a little bit higher, and make the crowd in that way support you also in reaching your targets. Uh, that should
Right.
be. I mean, you
Okay,
shouldn't
so
lose
you're
on that.
saying, okay, so you're saying when we're setting up the target, we are including
The
the
video, the
cost
cost
of
of the
the
campaign
video,
for
and then
sure.
what we wanna where we wanna take the project further. That's really a good
Yes.
tip.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about the social media, like following or having enough people on social media? Is that
Honestly, social
necessary for success?
yeah, social media really is crucial. You can't do without. We tried. We
Okay.
actually tried once. It was the hardest thing we ever did. And of course, it can work. Like there was crowdfunding before social media, but
Mm-hmm.
it really takes a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
I would not suggest you do that without having a social media platform where you can host your campaign. Now, don't start from zero. You are very right, Polina, that you don't start a page with maybe 2 followers on it, and go about it that way. Before you launch your campaign online, it's already important that you have a community that
Mm-hmm.
knows you. So
Right.
already start building a following, both offline and online, of people that know what your project is about. The fact that a crowdfunding campaign is coming, make people enthusiastic. This we call crowd building in the
Uh-huh.
crowdfunding
Crowdfunding.
jargon, but
Mm-hmm.
it's important and it's part of the preparation phase.
Yeah.
So
So not just
we
online, but also offline. That's
also offline,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
because and now I will go way much into the weeds, but it's part of really the different stages of crowdfunding that you start small, like you start your campaign by convincing the people closest to you to give some money and to start spreading the word for you. So
Mm-hmm.
by doing a crowdfunding campaign, you will also need ambassadors because I mean, of course, Paulina, you have your family, and then you have your friends, but then what beyond that? Like
Mm-hmm.
you cannot know the whole world, but by convincing, for example, your best friends and your partner and I don't know, like the people at your gym to tell their friends about your campaign. That is kind of the process that you want to get to. You want to create this snowball effect,
Uh-huh.
um, that your story goes to live its own life, and that other people really become enthusiastic for you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
So
That's
and that's really the way how to build your crowd
yeah.
also.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you for these insights. I also would like to invite anyone who is watching us live, if you have any questions to Charlotte that I'm not asking, or some details that you would like to know, then don't hesitate and send them through the platform that you're watching on, whether it's YouTube or LinkedIn, and we are going to see them here in this little studio where we are. So to continue, I think we established now, the basis of the campaign. But then, what else is really important to consider to make the crowdfunding campaign a success?
Um, well, I think it really starts by choosing your platform wisely. There are many platforms out there. I mean, Paulina, you already said you went to Kickstarter to support someone. There's, the European Kickstarter. You have Ulule, you have KissKissBankBank. You have very specialized platforms as well. For example, platforms that work around energy efficiency. You have platforms that work really more about agricultural projects. So
Mhm.
it's about cultural projects. That's of course a big one also. So don't just go for the first one, or the one that a friend used, but really look into like what they do, what they specialize in, but also what they offer you and what they
Oh,
cost. Because some
okay.
platforms are more expensive to use than others.
Mhm.
Now, for a very sort of basic campaign to raise, for example, money around a product, Kickstarter or Ulule or KissKissBankBank are really good ones. But for example, if you are a Belgian NGO, you have a cultural project, um, you could consider a Belgian platform, because
Mhm.
they might know the sector really well. They could find partners for you. They could maybe even find match funding partners. They might know the philanthropy field well. We at Growfunding, for example, we love to engage our ecosystem with the projects that we do. So we go quite far. We also help projects by finding, for example, subsidies that they can use for their
Mhm.
projects. But we also, as I said in the beginning, like we coach projects quite closely. So if you think as an organization that you need some guidance on actually how to do a campaign, maybe find a platform that offers this coaching. So it's really there's a lot out there. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but yeah, really don't just go for the first platform that you see,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
there it can be quite crucial, the choice that you make in that regards.
Okay, so it sounds like by choosing the crowdfunding platform, it's actually much broader. It's actually entering a partnership that can mean a lot more for the
Yeah,
project than beyond the crowdfunding
yeah.
campaign. Yeah, and so some crowdfunding platforms provide support and others not necessarily. Is that
hmm
correct?
that's correct. Some are
Okay.
just more facilitators. So they offer the
Mhm.
digital infrastructure. They take care of, the payments, the payouts, that sort of thing. But then you have others like us, who provide workshops on how to set up your campaign. We go look for partners. We help you write your project text. We help you with the pitch. We can help you
Okay.
with the video, etc. So we go quite far. But then we're also quite, expensive, because you also pay for that service in, yeah, which I think makes sense. So that's another thing to consider also.
Mhm. Okay, so so build a network online, offline, have a good video, and choose the right platform. Any other important ingredients for success?
Yes, but maybe I can show a project that failed, because it's always quite interesting to talk about what makes a success by looking at why projects also do not succeed.
Okay.
So I find this is an interesting example of a project on our platform that did not succeed, which is quite rare because 90% of the projects on our platform reach their target amount. Now, here you see a project by Child Focus, which is a big NGO which focuses on missing children. For people who live in Belgium, you've probably seen their ads all over buses, other public spaces. So it's really a name that is out there.
Yeah.
So this campaign was for a very specific project. They wanted to launch a board game for young children, basically to make them aware on like what to do when a stranger approaches you. How do you like deal with like sexual approaches and all of that. So very serious topics, but approached in a very light, playful way, which is a very interesting and great topic in a sense. It's something that a lot of people can identify with. I mean, Paulina, you and I are both young parents. Like it's something that we care about deeply. So
absolutely.
So just to say that also the topic of this campaign, it's something that's really quite close to a lot of people's hearts. So you would think like smooth sailing for these people, like they're a big NGO, like everyone knows them. It's, you know, it's a topic that really speaks to people. Fine, like this
And what happened?
Easy peasy. So what happens? So the graph that you see here, like the green line, it's like an average campaign, and you see like a campaign sort of like goes up smoothly and generally reaches its target amounts. Child Focus never even really took off. Like they stayed very low on the money that they raised, and that was really because people within the NGO, they just didn't really care about it. So within the team itself, there was really no one who really owned the project. So this campaign was thought of by the leadership of Child Focus, but then there was not really anyone who would actually put in the work. And we already talked about the work a little bit earlier. A crowdfunding campaign is a lot of work. Like every day, once the campaign is online, you spend 1 or 2 hours just communicating about it, by reaching out, by calling, by being on social media. So it's very important that there is someone, preferably more people, who really own the campaign and who drive it. And in this case, that was really missing. And I think that comes really to the core of what it takes to make a project a success, or also it's a question about timing. So really asking yourself, is it the right time and the right place for my campaign to go online? And that basically starts with the question of, is my project mature enough to convince others that they should care about it and that they should support it? So what's really in it for others? But then also, do you have the time yourself to do the campaign, to put in the work, to prepare it well, to execute it, and to really follow up deeply with people?
Right.
And do you have a team around you also? I think that's really quite important. We see the projects that are owned by one person are often really quite hard. It's not that they don't succeed necessarily, but it's a lot of pulling, pushing. It's also mentally quite hard because you really go through ups and downs. There are periods where within a week you maybe get €5. I mean, what does that do to a person? You know, it's really it really can impact you also on a mental level. So be prepared for that it's not always easy, that it's sometimes also quite hard, and that you have to keep reminding people to give you money, which is also not the nicest thing to do, right?
I think the activists, especially, and people who are in value-based jobs sometimes do struggle quite a lot about asking for money. And actually, the interview in 3 weeks with Tim Malnick is a lot about, the psychology behind it, and what does it mean for activists to be sort of dealing with money. So that's a nice sort of bridge there.
Ah, wow, yeah, that will be
Yeah.
super interesting.
But any kind of work, I think, whether we are sending out job applications or project applications or whatever needs our energy, and we are not always getting sort of the feedback that keeps us going, is really hard. And what
Yeah,
you're describing, and I think it's really interesting, is that people have to like consider that before they start, and it's probably easier in a team, right, to
absolutely.
endure and support each other. That's very important. So
Yeah,
basically, among pitfalls, I have here that lack of project ownership, lack of resources in terms of time or dedicated people who are going to be taking care of the campaign, and also if a project isn't mature enough to be convincing others about it, and sort of getting that network and connections of supporters. These would be the main pitfalls that we can extrapolate
yeah.
from what you've said.
No,
That's
absolutely. And also, a crowdfunding campaign isn't for every project. Like
uh-huh.
if you as a project really only want money, and sometimes that is the case, sometimes you just need money. Like you don't need to build a network because you already have the network, or you don't need a big communication campaign around this. Then I would say do it differently. Like look for a grant, or look for a corporate sponsor, or look for like a philanthropic organization to support you, or a wealthy individual who can, support your project. It's because crowdfunding is a lot of work,
Mhm.
and it's not a magical solution. And also, when you do a crowdfunding once, it's not very easy to replicate it,
Uh-huh.
because crowdfunding specific, like typically, are really for very very aligned like projects. So they're very specific projects. I said before, for the Brussels binder, like of course we needed the money for the organization itself, but we said it was for the web developer because people want to really know where their
Concrete.
money is
Okay.
going.
Yeah.
You need to be very transparent, and you need to be very accountable to the people who support you. So be also prepared to be that. But if we as Brussels Binder would want to raise money now again, we would again go to the same people and say, oh, by the way, we're doing another campaign. Could you please support us? Now, that could go well because
Mhm.
people already know us and it's been a while. It was back in 2017. They might be willing like to support us again, but it's not the easiest ask to
Right.
again go to people and say, okay, can you really support us again?
Mhm.
Um, so also think about crowdfunding as a one-off type of fundraising for a very specific goal.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that it's not such a good idea to be crowdfunding for like an organization in general,
I mean,
but more
it
for
could
like a specific
yeah.
project or product, or yeah.
I mean, it could be for an organization, absolutely. But write your story well, like write your pitch well, like make sure that people really understand what it is about and what you're going to spend the money on. And as soon as they're on board with that, like it doesn't really matter, but be very specific in your ask. That's really important when it comes to crowdfunding. I mean, I also want to know where my money is going to.
Mm,
It's my money and I give it for a reason. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And what you're saying about this, whether people would repeatedly support a project, and maybe the power of novelty in a
Hmm.
way, and also about writing well the pitch and so on. It just makes me think that in the end of the day, sometimes people want to do good, they want to do value-based projects or nonprofit initiatives, but they actually have to be good marketers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny, like we always tell our project holders, we say, you will learn so much. You will learn to really become a good marketeer. You will really learn to become a good social media expert. And they're always, of course, like, yeah, whatever. But it's true, and that's. I mean, we talked about having the value of having a team, but it's also the value of having a team with different skills. Like, we at the
Right.
Brussels Binder were very, very fortunate to have two communication experts in our team. We had one fundraiser, like we had people who could write really well. We actually had someone who could make a video. So
Wow.
it's so that I mean that was a luxury, but
Yeah.
it's sort of when you start thinking about your campaign, start already looking around you, who could help me? Who
Mhm.
likes doing what? It's really, yeah, it's really important.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of this interview, unfortunately, because it's so
Unfortunately.
interesting. I could be spending here another hour. Any questions from anyone who's watching live, don't hesitate. And whilst someone is perhaps typing, I just wanted to ask my final question. So, if I understand, Growfunding is predominantly focused on Brussels or Belgium?
On Belgium, yeah.
On Belgium, and so local projects, in Belgium or
Hmm.
and Brussels could go to Growfunding. What about people who are watching this, who are in other countries? Where could they go? Especially if after listening to this, they are convinced that I want to have this kind of team with them as well.
Well, I'm always very much in favor of people going to local partners and not necessarily to the big international platforms. But maybe if people are watching now and they're super inspired to launch a campaign and they're in a specific country, they could just drop me an email and I could refer them to a partner. We are part of the fantastic European crowdfunding network, which has a lot of members and a lot of really great platforms. So I'd be very happy to give them a personal recommendation.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us today and giving us all the secrets of successful crowdfunding campaign and also what pitfalls to watch out for. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Take care.
Paulina.
Bye bye.